B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins, news and comment. It's Wednesday, January 24th, 2018. And a big birthday shout-out to my stepson, David, who is celebrating his 33rd birthday in London today. Nice going, Governor. Back here in the U.S. of A., the Democratic Party appears to be at a crossroads, and they are ready to take the wrong fork in the road. As we look back now at the 60-hour shutdown that appeared to be driven by the right motivation of the Democrats to force the hand of Republicans on DACA and to end the hostage-taking of the 800,000-plus so-called dreamers in this country. And it was West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin who had an outsized impact on the Senate Minority Leader, Schumer. And he threw a little tantrum. He said, "This place sucks." He was just, deeply opposed to the government shutdown. Dreamers don't matter in landlocked West Virginia, where poverty, unemployment, the long-term impact of the extraction of coal, the opioid crisis, they all create a situation where it's fair to say that the people of West Virginia are pretty internally focused. And Joe Manchin, who is a Democrat in name only, and who grabbed the Senate seat when Bob Byrd passed away a few years ago, it was 7 years ago. And Byrd, of course, himself had a history of racism, and he was just an institution in West Virginia. Likewise, the other most recent Democrat to represent that state in the Senate, Jay Rockefeller, moved there, bought the seat, and I believe he served 5 terms before he retired. So it's fair to say that the Democrats have a real challenge in holding on to the solo Senate seat that they hold from West Virginia today. But I would argue that Joe Manchin, if he is allowed to define the Democratic Party, he is taking them over a cliff, and in West Virginia terminology, down into the holler. Well, we'll never hear from him again. So Joe Manchin has expressed his frustration. He was toying with the idea of retiring. That was his leverage, because if he retired, there doesn't appear to be a Democrat who could stand up and win a statewide race under the current climate. At least that's the Beltway consensus. And if you live in West Virginia and you have another view, please share it with me, Peter at peterbcollins.com. Is there a rising Democrat, a progressive, who would have a shot at winning in November? And I'd at least love to see Joe Manchin challenged in a primary. But Manchin essentially used his leverage by threatening to retire to say, if people like me can't win from red states, you'll be in the minority for the rest of your life. And that is exactly 180 degrees wrong. Because in the current climate, this cautious, poll-driven, corporate-funded Democratic Party is going nowhere because it is so out of touch with its progressive base, and it falsely believes that it can win back Republicans who have Republicans and some Democrats who defected to Trump in the 2016 election. And I argue that the real issue is turnout. There are so many people who, even despite the Trump-Clinton race in 2016, did not vote, that the real challenge is to turn out progressives, to give them a reason to believe in the Democratic Party and to swing the pendulum back at least somewhat to the left. But you can't hear an argument like that in Washington, D.C., and I have Exhibit A here. Op-ed columnist Frank Bruni of the New York Times is promoting the exact same wrong message. He did a dialogue in his column with the former Massachusetts governor, African-American Deval Patrick, who is a moderate. He now works for Goldman Sachs. And Joe Trippi, a longtime Democratic strategist. He's worked for Jerry Brown here in California. I think he was a lead dog with John Kerry back in 2004. And most recently, he ran the campaign of Doug Jones in Alabama. And Trippi and Patrick try to argue that the restive progressive base, these are the people who need to sit down and shut up and let the professionals run the party, because the only way to win, they believe, in red zones, whether it's a congressional district or a Senate seat, is by trying to pander to the middle. What they call common sense policies and solutions, less stridency. The more Democrats can hold the energy to the party base and appeal to Republican women, younger Republicans, and college-educated Republicans in more districts, Democrats will be competitive and win. That's Joe Trippi's advice. Now, he just ran a race in Alabama where Doug Jones, despite being almost as conservative as Joe Manchin of West Virginia, he pulled out a narrow victory over the most flawed political candidate who has surfaced in recent years, I guess, next to Trump. And that would be Judge Roy Moore. And so Moore's dalliances with younger women when he was a 30-year-old district attorney and many other issues combined to eke out this narrow victory for Doug Jones. But I don't believe that it is a teachable moment. I don't believe that it sets any kind of a pattern. In fact, I think that people who embrace that are headed in exactly the wrong direction. But you can't tell that to the experts because it threatens their corporate funding and it threatens the future of long-term incumbents like my old friend Nancy Pelosi, who should be announcing her retirement right now and allow a younger generation of people who are not compromised by the past history of the Democratic Party, and perhaps somebody who's actually read the autopsy report on the 2016 election, written by Karen Bernal, Norman Solomon, and a couple of other people whose names don't pop to mind right now. So this is a true turning point. And I fear that the turn signals are on, and they've got the GPS programmed in exactly the wrong direction. Now, here's a new poll that I think supports my contentions. It was conducted by Democracy Corps and Greenberg Research for Women's Voices Women Vote Action Fund. And it finds that Democrats on the so-called generic ballot, when people are simply asked, would you prefer a Democrat or Republican in November, the advantage for Democrats is 49 to 38. And that's up from just a 5-point margin last fall. But the prediction is that 40 million Americans who voted in 2016 won't cast a ballot in the 2018 midterms. And to make matters worse, 2/3 of those drop-off voters will be members of the under 30 crowd. So this poll was conducted after the tax cuts were passed. And this shows that there are many people who, despite the machinations of the Republicans and the obvious tilt toward the interests of the 1% and corporate interests, well, we have a serious identity crisis for the Democratic Party. And last night, talking to Rachel Maddow, Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Senate leader, he said, God forbid that we don't reach a deal on DACA and on March 5th, Trump starts deporting dreamers. And after he said, God forbid, you could see a little salivation, a little, wetness of the lips there. Because what he was talking about is the bad optics of deporting dreamers and how that could help the Democratic Party in the primaries and in November. And that kind of cynical calculation shows that there's not that much difference, I'm sorry, between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to using the hostages that we call dreamers for partisan political scoring. Schumer also badly bungled, and it's now becoming clearer, that on Friday when he went to the White House for a last-ditch meeting with Trump, he offered to provide Democratic support for full funding of the obscene and ridiculous southern border wall that is Trump's wet dream. And now he's trying to unring that bell. He's saying the wall offer is off the table. But you know, the way these things work is that once a concession like this is made, you can't take it back. This is now seen by Republicans as something that they have negotiated for and won. And because they've got the Democrats over a barrel about DACA and many other issues, and the Democrats are in the minority, we're going to see them get rolled again. I hope to be wrong about this. And I do want to clarify, yesterday I was fumbling a little bit about what the actual date is of the next expiration of a continuing resolution on the budget, and that is February 8th. So this is a huge mess. And the Republicans have shifted back to talking about everything in terms of amnesty. That is their code word, the hot button word that pollsters have figured out really gets into the minds of the hardline Republican nationalists. And so the extortion over the Dreamers will continue as they remain hostages in one of the ugliest political struggles that I've seen in my lifetime. Here's another ugly scene related to immigrants. Last week, some people from Tucson, a humanitarian group called No More Deaths, published a report and put some videos up that I've seen frequently on Facebook. And the videos show that Border Patrol agents, when they find water bottles that are left by the No More Deaths group to try to help people who have crossed our border survive the Arizona desert. It is purely a humanitarian effort. They don't act as coyotes. They don't try to draw people here. They simply look at the situation that it's very dangerous for people to cross that desert, and many people die. So it's pretty ugly to see these border agents emptying bottles and kicking them into the air, basically saying, who cares if these people die? And that, I think, epitomizes the kind of self-righteousness that many Americans cling to today. That, well, these are less than humans. I mean, there are many people who treat animals better and would never deny them water. And would never gloat of, destroying a water supply for them. And curiously, one of the volunteers of No More Deaths has been arrested. He was picked up with two people who were described as illegal immigrants, and his name is, I think, Scott Warren, age 35, and he is a faculty associate at Arizona State University, and he was picked up as he was giving what he considered to be humanitarian aid, food and water. And this wasn't like, on the border or, a short distance in from the Mexican border. This was in a town where these people showed up. Now, back in 2005, two volunteers with the group were arrested, charged with felonies while they were actively providing aid, and a federal judge dismissed those indictments. So it's just another example of the arrogance, the insensitivity, this righteous judgment that I deserve to live in the United States and these people don't. And what happens to them, it's all on them because they don't understand the meaning of illegal. Well, there's a curious explainer article in today's Washington Post, and it is aimed at those who don't believe the Trump-Russia narrative and who suspect that the FBI may have crossed the line in trying to set up Russiagate as a way to bring down Trump before the election and after he was elected to try to limit his scope as president. And as you know, I'm in this awkward position of being totally opposed to Trump. But I also am a longtime critic and skeptic of the FBI. And I don't find it hard to believe that in the Hillary Clinton investigation that they pulled punches and displayed favoritism, or that in the decision to seek FISA warrants for members of the Trump campaign, that they may have crossed lines, in particular using the so-called dossier that was supplied by Fusion GPS, the paid opposition research muckrakers for the Clinton campaign. So Philip Bump dives into what he calls anti-FBI conspiracy theories that are rippling through conservative media. Now, it's fair to say that these are cherry-picked ideas that are advanced for partisan purposes. This 4-page memo from the Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee is still not out in the public view, but we keep getting characterizations of how damaging it is and how it is the real story. And as you know, I am as skeptical of the Trump defenders as I am of Rachel Maddow and the Democrats who promote the unproven claims of Russian hacking of the DNC and meddling in our election. So Bump talks about the dossier, and he also talks about the memo that I just referred to, the one by the Republican House Intelligence Committee operatives, and the issue of whether the dossier was used in the FISA court warrant requests, one that was turned down and the second that was granted. Was the judge aware of where that information came from, that it was the product of partisan political research? And it's interesting because the Post continues to refer to the dossier as largely unproven. It's been out there for over a year, public. And I find it amazing that media outlets continue to treat it like dirty laundry that has to be held, at arm's length. It either is accurate in parts or it's not. And so this, in my view, is an effort to inoculate the believers of the media-hyped conspiracy theories about Trump, Russia, and Russian meddling in our election, while they ignore the domestic players who meddled in the election through voter suppression, manipulation of the tabulation of the vote in Michigan, and many other very serious anomalies. Then they kind of try to ease your concerns about the missing text messages from Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the illicit lovers who both worked at the FBI, and who talked about an insurance policy. And the Trump-Russia narrative can be seen as that insurance policy. So again, a lot of this is just speculation and counter-speculation, and the Post comes down, of course, on the side of the speculation that it's been promoting. These are really tough times for journalism in the United States. We're also learning that after Trump fired James Comey as FBI director, he interviewed the deputy director, Andy McCabe. And McCabe is now a persona non grata in Trump world. They want him out of the FBI. Jeff Sessions has been pressuring the new FBI director, Chris Wray. We talked about this yesterday. It's reported that Wray has threatened to resign if Sessions continued to press him on cleaning house of the holdovers from the Comey administration at the FBI. But the most curious thing is that at one of the meetings between Trump and McCabe, the Donald asked McCabe who he had voted for president in 2016. Now, this is way out of bounds. It's not just rude or impolite or tactless. It's just downright wrong for a president to say, hey, basically, did you vote for me? And the answer to that question, obviously, would affect whether Trump named McCabe to be the acting FBI director or picked somebody else. So it's just another anomaly, another head shaker in the Trump era. And in addition to Jim Comey and Jeff Sessions being interviewed by investigators for the Mueller Special Counsel Office, we're now learning that Mike Pompeo, the CIA director, has been questioned. We don't actually have a date of when this occurred because the news comes from a leak via NBC News. So he's described Pompeo as a peripheral witness to Comey's firing. And also Steve Bannon is expected to sit down with Mueller's people in the near future. Every day I like to pause for a second and thank the people who support my work here at the Peter B. Collins Podcast with your subscriptions. And if you want to pause the podcast and visit my website to take out your own new subscription, I'd love that. Why don't you hit pause right now? Anyway, Jason Spitzer, Aidan McAleer, Casita Kojo Amenya, and Auntie Lundberg. They're all staunch subscribers. Every month they kick in a few bucks to help me out with the costs here, and I'd appreciate it if you do the same. So you go to peterbcollins.com, click the menu tab, pull it down, click on Become a Subscriber. That takes you right to the sign-up page where, boom, in a couple of minutes, you can be all set with your own PayPal subscription. And if you're allergic to PayPal because you don't like Peter Thiel, and there are plenty of reasons to feel that way, you can always just use snail mail, and you can send me cash, check, money order correspondence to my post office box. It's Box 150-660, San Rafael, California, 94915. That's Box 150660, San Rafael, and the zip 94915. Well, I consider this to be an important step forward. The city of New York yesterday sued the makers of prescription painkillers like OxyContin, Percocet, and fentanyl for $500 million for their role in creating the deadly and devastating epidemic of drug addiction in this country. Mayor Bill de Blasio said more New Yorkers have died from opioid overdoses than car crashes and homicides combined in recent years. Big Pharma helped to fuel this epidemic by deceptively peddling these dangerous drugs and hooking millions. A record 1,000-plus people died in New York in 2016 from opioid-related overdoses. Now, there are more than 60 federal lawsuits that have been consolidated before a federal judge in Ohio named Dan Polster, and I think this could lead to like the big interstate tobacco settlement that occurred in the late 90s. Now, there was an unintended outcome from the big tobacco settlement, and that was the Chamber of Commerce ganged up, started to promote the appointment of lawyers, conservative, pro-corporate lawyers, many aligned with the Federalist Society. And those are the kind of judges that Trump and the Republicans are trying to pack the courts with right now. And speaking of Trump, he and virtually the entire cabinet have all taken off tonight for Davos, Switzerland, for the World Economic Forum. And I don't know what their agenda is. Trump is there to settle a score, because when he was just a CEO, the other leaders of the global corporate elite did not invite Trump ever to come to their conference each January in Switzerland. And Trump's former biographer, Michael D'Antonio, said part of him will feel the resentment that has long smoldered within, and part will revel in the fact that he's the president and no one else is. Considering his tendency to say or tweet whatever comes to mind, we might expect both Trumps, the testy one and the triumphant one, to appear. But with all the cabinet officers and other cronies of Trump who are going on this trip, you wonder if they're not really gilding their own lily, lining their own pockets with business cards for future deals as soon as they swing through the revolving doors of the Trump administration. Or given their lack of compliance with basic ethics norms, maybe they will start before they leave government. But it's hard to imagine that they are there to promote investment in the United States and the interests of average Americans. Oh, and Melania is not going. In Lansing, Michigan, after a 7-day hearing with more than 150 women who made victim statements against former Dr. Lawrence Nasser, the former team doctor for American gymnastics. He was sentenced to 40 to 175 years in prison, and he already has a lengthy federal sentence for child pornography, so he will never likely be released from prison. And the judge in the case, who I commend for enabling the victim statements, she couldn't resist grandstanding to the cameras. And she said, "You've done nothing to deserve to walk outside a prison again. It is my honor and privilege to sentence you. I just signed your death warrant." That's over the top. And, like I say, it's grandstanding for the cameras. Yesterday, we talked about Pat Meehan, the Republican congressman from Pennsylvania who was kicked off the Ethics Committee after it was revealed that he settled a sexual harassment case with a former aide. Well, he kind of gave us a weird confession yesterday. He says he saw her as a soulmate, and he lashed out when he found out she was dating someone else. Does that mean they had been dating? He claims he never pursued a romantic relationship with her, and he's refusing to step down. He said that his much younger former aide, when he met her over ice cream, he said that he'd seen her as a soulmate and admitted that after she started seeing someone outside of the office, he reacted selfishly. This is TMI. I started to talk to her about my reaction to her new relationship, and selfishly, I was thinking about what this was going to mean to me, that she was leaving the office. This was going to change the dynamic that was very special. And come on, give me a break, will you? I disagree with the NFL's decision. They offered advertising space in the Super Bowl program to a veterans group, and when the veterans met their deadline and submitted their ad with a check, it was rejected by the NFL. Now, I don't agree with the message that this veterans group wanted to send. Their message is that everybody should stand for the national anthem at the Super Bowl. And while I disagree with this desire to force people to publicly participate in this ritual that amounts to a kind of loyalty oath to our country, I defend their right to express their point of view. And I don't believe that the Super Bowl is some, national space that should be preserved free of politics. If you can afford an ad in the program or the millions of dollars it takes to put a 30-second spot on the TV show, you should be allowed to do it. Here in San Francisco, an interesting struggle over identity politics. As you may know, our mayor, Ed Lee, died in December. The interim acting mayor has been the president of the Board of Supervisors, an African-American female named London Breed. And London Breed would have remained as the interim mayor, except the charter of the city and county of San Francisco allows the board to bypass her and name a separate interim mayor who cannot run for the special election that's scheduled for June. And supporters of London Breed include those who promote identity politics, and they believe that she deserves coronation. Now, the problems I have are that London Breed comes out of the same group of well-heeled supporters, tech billionaires and real estate moguls here in San Francisco, who brought us Ed Lee and who have allowed the city to change sharply where the middle class is being pushed out. And one of the supervisors spit it out honestly. She said that she was supporting a moderate named Mark Farrell to replace London Breed until the special election because tech moguls and real estate billionaires who supported former mayors Gavin Newsom and Ed Lee have coalesced around Breed. And Christine Pelosi, that's Nancy's daughter, someone I've known for a long time and I respect, but she's really committed to the identity politics here of a black woman being mayor. And I think that the Board of Supervisors was wise to level the playing field for the special election, not give special advantage to London Breed, and if she can win in her own right, more power to her. Over at the NSA, they made some changes on their website and the mission statement, and they have quietly eliminated words like honesty and openness from a statement of core values for the National Security Agency. So previously, the agency had featured honesty as the first of 4 core values listed on their website, along with respect for the law, integrity, and transparency. Now, those are all a joke because they haven't lived up to that at all. So maybe in a bow to reality, those terms have been eliminated, and the new top value is commitment to service, excellence in the pursuit of our critical mission. Yeah, they want to be the best damn domestic surveillance operators and unconstitutional data collectors that they can possibly be. The scourge of the NSA and other spook agencies, Julian Assange, is reported to be in a situation of dangerous physical and mental health. A couple of doctors, one from Boston University, have visited Assange at the Embassy of Ecuador in London recently, and they were authorized to say that their professional opinion is that his continued confinement is dangerous physically and mentally to him and a clear infringement of his human right to health care. They've asked the British, who previously denied such requests, to allow him to visit a hospital without being taken into custody. The Trump administration has been ordered to give lawyers with the ACLU at least 72 hours' notice before transferring a U.S. citizen who is being held in Iraq as an enemy combatant. We don't know the man's name. We know he was born in the United States but has dual Saudi citizenship, and that he was aligned with some group in Iraq and was captured by Syrian militia in September. So this is kind of a murky case where he was held incommunicado. We still don't know what his name is, where he claims to be from. But the ACLU won a courtroom victory, and Jonathan Haffetz, the attorney representing the man, said, "The U.S. cannot lawlessly hand over Americans to other countries. This ruling helps to ensure that this citizen's rights are respected, and he will receive due process in an American court." And finally today, a powerful op-ed in today's New York Times, penned by Chen Guangchen, who is a civil rights activist and the author of The Barefoot Lawyer, a blind man's fight for justice and freedom in China. And I'm going to link to his editorial commentary because he points out that Apple Computer is selling out to the authoritarian Chinese government. And Apple has announced that it will be partnering with the Guizhou Cloud Big Data, state-owned company with Communist Party connections, to build the first data storage center in China. And in China, the iCloud content will be sent to and managed by this government entity, GCBD. And what the writer argues is that Apple seems to be absolving itself of responsibility for what the authorities may choose to do with the personal data in the possession of GCBD. And he says that Apple seems to have a double standard. They champion privacy rights and limits to government intrusion when it's good for their consumer base in the United States. They don't necessarily live up to it, but they give lip service to it. But in China, they don't even bother to do that. Thanks for listening to my daily news and comment podcast. It's available on YouTube, and I remain your humble host, Peter B. Collins.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails.